Ladies and gentlemen, kicking off the first stop on his world tour, our new president and prophet, Russell M. Nelson! You say you want some revelation, well, here you go.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the weekly Mormon News Roundup, where D-Bays and crew are going to ruminate on the great and spacious beehive. Today is August 27th, 2023. We're going to talk about the LDS Church helping Hawaii Maui residents in the aftermath of a terrible fire. The James Huntsman lawsuit is still going on, and we'll give you a brief update about that. There's also the church is trying to put a temple into the rustic and rural neighborhoods in Cody, Wyoming. There's been some new developments that you're not going to want to miss. And finally, we have Gail Miller, who's been in the news. She's donated a lot of money to the church, and she's been featured in the church news. And one more bonus is that BYU Idaho has updated the honor code policy. You're not going to want to hear, you're not going to want to miss what they've done here. So if you want to get in touch with us, we're at MormonNewsRoundup.org or www.mormonnewsroundup.org. I'd like to invite onto the program our longtime co-host here, Al. Al, how's it going?
I'm so glad to be here this week, D-Bays. Thank you very much for the invite to come on. You know, it really is kind of a crapshoot when it comes to the news, doing a news podcast. You never know what's going to come up. But this week, I am so fortunate that I get to come back and guest host with this week's news, because it's a good one. It's juicy.
This is going to be really, really good. Now, Al, right off the bat here, we have Donald Trump. He was indicted, but this is the LDS connection here. When the temple worker, this is what the temple worker looks like when I forget my recommend.
Oh, yeah, that is the scowl. There's like pure hatred and anger. I mean, those eyes are just... It reminds me of when Jerry Seinfeld would say Newman's name, and he said, the way that I do that is I just take all the hate and negative emotions I feel, and I just channel that into saying Newman, and that's exactly what those eyes say.
Yeah, a funny story. I actually I didn't have when I was getting married to my wife in the Mount Timpanogos Temple. My state president had failed to endorse the recommend, so there was an issue. We had to call him on the phone on the day of. So yeah, that temple worker that is giving me PTSD flashbacks.
Yeah, you have seen that glare, yeah.
Yeah. One more meme for you that goes along with this, and this is on the left. You know, we had Donald Trump when he very first announced for president. He looks healthy. He looks good. He looks he looks chipper. Then we have the mugshot from the Fulton County indictment here, and this is the tweet that goes with it. Your grandpa on the day of your baptism versus the grandpa on the day you announce you've left the church.
Oh yeah, that's very good.
That pretty much sums it up for me. Or I've got one more meme for you. Tell me which one of these three you like. This is your bishop after a member of the church tells them that they can pay a full tithing, but then they gave it to a different charity rather than the church.
Oh, that fits very well too.
Yeah, which one do you like out of those three?
Oh, for heaven's sake, Steve, you just got three gems here, and like, which of my children do I like the best? I'm gonna go with the third one, the bishop. I love that one. That's great.
It makes a lot of sense. Now, for our listeners out there, if you come on over to Spotify, you can leave us a voicemail, which we'd be happy to play on our next episode. And we're also on Twitter. We're at News Mormon. Let us know which one of these memes you find to be the most enjoyable. Now, our first article of the week here is a follow-up here, Al, and this is from the church's official handle on X. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is expanding its charitable donations to the Hawaiian island of Maui. Christopher Waddell, the same guy who was on 60 Minutes, first counselor in the presiding bishopric, announced that the church will give $1 million to the American Red Cross to help relief efforts after the devastating wildfires. There's shelter to survivors, meals, medical attention. Now, I know you served your mission here somewhat close by there, Al. Did you? Were you there? Or?
Well, I have been to Lahaina. Maui, the zone of Maui encompasses Molokai, Lanai, and Maui, the islands. I served on Molokai, so I've been to a zone conference in Lahaina several times, and yeah, I am familiar with the area, and boy, what a tragedy this one turned out to be. I'm glad that the church has decided to give some contributions of charitable help, but the article's a little surprising, or I should say the tweet was really surprising.
Now, why is that tweet surprising to you, Al?
Well, let's see. Are we on that tweet now? Where it says How long does it take for the church to make $1 million?
Oh yeah, we're going to get to that. We're definitely going to get to that point there. And
yeah, that's the one I was looking at.
Yeah, that tweet that you brought up. Yeah, good point. This is from at Peggy's Privy. It says, with an estimated $150 billion in investment assets and a reported 7% average in annual growth, the Church of Jesus Christ makes $1.2 million every single hour from just interest alone. Now, don't forget here. Okay, so from Ensign Peak, we're making $1 million an hour just from Ensign Peak. We're also, Ensign Peak and tithing donations are roughly equivalent. We're also making $1 million an hour from tithing. And there's also the third part of the church's income, and that's its commercial ventures. Now, no one has any idea in the general public how much the church is making, but it owns a huge amount of farms, real estate, commercial ventures, hospitality, hotels. Would not be surprising to me at all if they had a similar amount that was coming in from the commercial ventures, $1 million an hour. I don't think that is too big of a stretch. So what we're trying to say here is that $1 million for the donation to Maui is about roughly the equivalent of about 20 minutes worth of income from the church. I don't know how much money you make in 20 minutes, Al, but I don't know, maybe roughly the equivalent of either one of us giving like $5 or $10. Would that be about right?
That sounds about accurate. So I know we're going to the Widow's Mite report later on in the podcast, and I'm really excited. I love those guys, by the way. But the whole story of the Widow's Mite, you have this poor old lady that goes in and donates from what little she has. And Jesus goes and says, well, while all these rich men are throwing bags and buckets of money into the donation coffers, he's like, that she's given more than all of them. And the disciples, not being the quickest guys, are like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, well, she gave from her want, they gave from their abundance. And this is a prime example of giving from your abundance versus other people giving from their want. Yeah, about $5-10 from the rest of us. That sounds about right.
Yeah, about 20 minutes, as I laid out in the numbers before. The church makes this about every 20 minutes, give or take. Now, we had the church, it released from the Wall Street Journal, did not an expose, but they cracked open the costs of LDS Temple construction a couple of months ago. In particular, in the Pocatello, Idaho Temple, they were able to obtain the actual cost of that temple based on what the church submitted to the city of Pocatello, Idaho. And it turned out that temple there, Al, was worth about $69 million. So if we're trying to put this into perspective here, so the church is giving $1 million to help alleviate the human suffering in Maui, but that's only 1% of what they were spending just on the Pocatello, Idaho temple alone. So that to me is showing the priorities of the church, is the church's priorities in growing a hedge fund, in maintaining tithing donations, in its commercial ventures, in buildings, or is it in the people who are in abject suffering in Maui?
Well, by their fruits ye shall know them. This is. It seems to me that where the money goes is where the treasure is. There is your heart. Also, I think that's the quote. Yeah.
Yeah, from the Sermon on the Mount.
That's right. So we see where the treasure's going.
Yeah, we certainly can. And I want to say that I've never donated $1 million to anything. I don't have those kind of resources. I haven't come anywhere close.
Oh, you and me both.
Yeah, this is just amazing. I saw this other tweet here on the Maui incident here. It says, it's got all these different people here that were killed in the Maui. It's got Twitter stake. It's got progressive Mormons. It's got by common consent. It's got the Exmos. They're all dead. But Desnat, Al, it's alive and well.
Yep. You got some gems on here this week. This is great.
I revel in what I see as irony. Okay, there's just a lot of irony in this story.
Oh, yeah. In this whole show this week, this is great because I mean that, especially the temples. I mean, this is like the church is trying so hard to dot the whole planet with these temples, and all that it's doing is just revealing how the ostentatiousness of a building that's going to sit for the most part empty and useless to the community, other than just a big stone building, big stone structure, while the community around it suffers.
Yeah. I mean, if you go back to remember to that Wall Street Journal article, which was released a couple of months ago, which was talking about the Pocatello, Idaho temple again, we had Bishop Kaze who came in and said that his vision and also the senior leader's vision of the church is, and his word is grandiose. It's a grandiose vision of the church, which means that if you're giving a lot of money to people who are suffering in Maui, that doesn't fulfill a grandiose mission of the church. That's why we have a $5 billion. Just President Nelson alone has announced $5 billion in temple construction, but we only see $1 million in Maui. We see $44 million to the World Food Bank. I think it was 2 weeks ago. But we're just seeing where is the priority? What is the percentages here? They're not remotely close. You know what I mean?
$1 million in Hawaii is not going to go very far towards rebuilding.
No, it absolutely won't. The church, I also want to transition to our next article here. This is the church is also spending money on these young adult, single adult events in Salt Lake City here.
Yeah, this is odd.
Yeah, the church is taking a bigger approach to this, kind of a more evangelical approach here. What are we seeing here, Al?
We see a bunch of kids that are trying to have a good time. They want to have a good time, but they don't really know how. This is really uncomfortable for them. So I don't know if anybody watching this can see the looks on these kids' faces. They look a little out of place and like they aren't quite sure what to do. They don't feel very comfortable doing this. It's not coming very naturally. But hey, this is what young people around the world are doing. They're having fun. They're going to concerts. They're waving their hands in the air. They're supposed to be having a good time. They just don't really know how to have a good time, or if it's okay to have a good time like this yet, is it?
I mean, this is in the Salt Palace Convention Center. And this is nothing compared to when I was growing up in the church. I never participated in anything remotely like this.
Oh no, we were taught very harshly against this sort of thing.
Yeah. And Al, I honestly, I miss the old days where we just practiced a simple religion. And I think about, those incantations to appease Spanish guardian spirits, or the amulets endowed with powers from celestial bodies, or slitting the throats of dogs to find buried treasure, or fighting magical toads in boxes. I think we should go back to a simpler religion, Al. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, give me some of that old time religion. The kind Grandma used to make. Yep.
Okay, well, maybe we shouldn't. Actually,
oh my goodness.
The more that I think about that, the more that I think that we shouldn't do that. Actually, but hey, if you could leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, we really need those 5-star reviews. If you could take a minute, give us a thumbs up on YouTube, we'd greatly appreciate it, and subscribe while you're at it. Now, Al, I was hoping that you would take the lead on this because we have an update here from the James Huntsman lawsuit here. We've seen some stuff taking place this week. In fact, just last Monday. What's going on with James Huntsman and his lawsuit of trying to get his tithing back?
Yeah, so Sam Brunson from By Common Consent, I guess this is the second or the follow-up article that he's written, and it's been a long time coming. It's been months since he last commented on this lawsuit situation. But okay, so what's been happening is that James Huntsman has appealed the district court decision, and the district court was a panel of 3 judges, and they sided with the church and said, no, there's not enough reason to go forward with this lawsuit. So his appeal went from the 3 judges up to 9 judges on the district court. So the whole district court panel is going to take a look at this and decide, is there enough reason to go forward with this? And the 9 judges, all looking at this together, said, yeah, as a matter of fact, there's enough reason to go forward. So this is just one step in the process of this lawsuit, because the church is trying really, really hard to get this shut down. But since these 9 judges on the district court have said it can go forward, that opens the church up to discovery, which means that the church is going to have to turn over to James Huntsman their financials, since that's what this whole thing is about, is that he says, well, I want to see where the financials of the church are, what's coming in and what's going out, because the lawsuit is all about, he was told that his tithing money was going straight to the maintenance of the church and the charitable things to, help those who are in need, right? But he said he did not agree to give his tithing to the church so that they could use it for commercial enterprise like City Creek Mall and bailing out DMBA. So the judge,
Deseret Mutual Insurance.
Yeah, Deseret Mutual. Yeah, that's right. Deseret Mutual Insurance. That one, they said, well, that's not really a commercial enterprise, so that one doesn't really qualify. However, the City Creek Mall, there's nothing that it is other than a commercial enterprise.
Well, I'll just put one point of clarification. The mutual insurance company, the church did according to Bishop Waddell, the church gave a loan to the Deseret Mutual Insurance Company, which you could consider to be a bailout. And nonprofits are allowed to give loans to for-profit entities. Deseret Mutual Insurance is a for-profit entity. The issue is that there was no public church statements saying that tithing would not be used for loans for Deseret Mutual Insurance. However, this is the big rub here. There were a number of statements from senior church leaders, including President Hinckley in 2003, which said that no tithing has been or is being used or would be used in the construction of the City Creek Mall. Those statements now are under severe scrutiny, and the appeals court here has said that a reasonable juror may conclude that James Huntsman felt that his tithing would not be used for City Creek Mall, but it very well, depending on how you define tithing, it could have been used in that purpose. That's why we're at where we're at.
Exactly. And it's going to come down to a lot of things like the church uses the same term for tithing, whether it's talking about the tithing that's the direct donations from the members, or if it's the interest that's been gained from the investing the tithing that's been donated by the members. So I think he's got a pretty good case, especially since if you and I were to go and look back at every church manual, every conference talk, everything that the church has said it does with its tithing, have you seen anywhere where the church says, oh, well, it uses it to invest in real estate, invest in the stock market?
Now, that's no look. Let me just say, it's no problem if there's nowhere in a manual that says that it won't invest in commercial ventures, because that's not a lie. You don't have to tell the members what you're going to do with the tithing at all. The only thing that you can't do is you can't say we're not going to use your donations for this, and then use your donations for that. This. Okay, if the church had been completely silent on City Creek Mall, James Huntsman would have no leg to stand on whatsoever, and that's why the circuit court threw out the Deseret Mutual Insurance is because there were no public statements about Deseret Mutual Insurance.
True, the church never said anything about it, right?
Right. So if the church had just kept its mouth shut, we wouldn't be in or had told a very, very transparent truth. You could have told the truth that says that we are funding City Creek Mall, that we take your tithing, the excess portion we put into an investment fund, and then the returns from that investment fund, we're going to put those into City Creek. You could have said that, or you could have just said nothing, and James Huntsman would have no leg to stand on whatsoever.
Absolutely. You know what I mean? I just am looking back thinking, is there any place where the church says it does anything with tithing funds other than, oh no, what we use tithing funds for is for maintaining the church, for paying the light bill, for building temples and church houses. It doesn't ever say that it goes into investments and real estate holdings, etc.
Right.
So yeah, I think he's got a pretty good case that's coming up. And I guess the 9 judge panel for the district court agreed.
Remember,
they can go forward.
This has only gone to the 3-judge panel, but it could, the church could appeal this and eventually take it to a 9-judge panel. So the appeals court was a 3-judge panel. 2 of the judges agreed with James Huntsman, who said that he thought that the statements from the church leaders said that absolutely no tithing would be used for City Creek Mall, but it appears that it was. So let me just read one more quote from this article here. It says, has Huntsman won? This is from the Sam Brunson by common consent. It said, far from it at this point. The court merely said that as a matter of law, it's possible that he was defrauded. He still faces the burden of demonstrating, number one, that the church's statement that it didn't use tithing money to build City Creek Mall was fraudulent, and 2, that he relied on that statement in paying his tithing. Both, I think, are heavy lifts, and both lifts are his. So, yeah, I mean, he's not. It isn't a slam dunk, but
those are great quote. I'm glad that you pulled that one out, because that was one that this is by no means over, or we haven't even begun to fight is really a good term for it.
Yeah, and the Salt Lake Tribune covered this in a Mormon Land podcast, which I listened to, and it says, where does it stand? What's at issue? Will it succeed? It's then President Gordon B. Hinckley's general conference remarks that are at the heart of the dispute, but James Huntsman fraud case still faces many, many challenges. And of course, James Huntsman here is part of the Huntsman family, who was the governor of Utah for many years. And of course, it's President Hinckley's statement in particular in 2003 that is the biggest issues here, saying that you paid for the City Creek Mall with funds from invested reserves, and saying that that's not tithing. That may be a distinction without a difference. Okay?
That's right.
That's the core of the argument here. And so, if this goes to discovery, sorry, I'll edit that out. So if this ends up going to discovery, that's where the church is going to have to reveal some of its finances. And that, the James Huntsman could ask to subpoena senior church leaders, because some of them back in that time frame were members of the Quorum of the 12. President Nelson on the stand, presiding bishopric on the stand. I mean, wow, this could be big.
Yeah, what we're seeing here is reminiscent of like when you have a couple of really big generals going at each other in a war, right? Not like our next topic, which is a little bit more David and Goliath. But this one, you got a couple of big titans clashing here.
Yeah. Now, before we get to the David and Goliath story, I just want to. The Widow's Mite report released a quick update this week, and I just wanted to touch on it here. And that's that. Some of the information from the appeals court from the James Huntsman lawsuit, the church was forced into revealing some of the how much money it was making from Ensign Peak during this time frame. Okay, so that's pretty juicy stuff, because the church is loath to reveal anything about how much money it makes, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they guard that.
Yeah, so here is the appeals court filing. It's validating David Nielsen's Ensign Peak data. So the church record submitted to the California Court of Appeals in 2023 show that Ensign Peak made $3.9 billion in total invested profits in 2013. And guess what, Al? That tracks really well with what David Nielsen told us. David Nielsen has been vindicated once again. Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, the people saying, well, this is just a disgruntled employee that he just, telling a bunch of lies. Those lies are turning out to be pretty dang accurate truths.
Yeah, so he said that the church made $3.9 billion in 2003. That was accurate. Also, records also validate the total value of the church's investment in City Creek Mall. So David Nielsen said that the church invested $1.4 billion. And the amount that the church disclosed to the California Court of Appeals, it said that it spent $1.438 billion. David, and it seems like in almost every turn, David Nielsen's whistleblower complaint seems to be accurate time and time again now.
That's right. So good on David for seeing the light and then blowing the whistle.
Yeah. Now, that's not the only lawsuit that's reached the news here this week. And this is kind of an obscure one here, Al, but I found it. I subscribe to Church Beat, which is written by Tad Welch, who does a fantastic job, by the way, of covering the church. I think he does a great job here. Now, this lawsuit here, there's a lawsuit that's challenged Colorado's universal preschool program's ban on funding for religious preschools. So in Colorado, a couple of years ago, they made a law that says, okay, we're going to fund universal preschool, and that was supposed to also include religious organizations. About this is that there's a firm of religious liberty lawyers who's the church has filed amicus briefs in the past to be a part of. The church has tried to filed an amicus, friend of the court briefs, saying that the federal lawsuit against Colorado to protect the ability of 2 Catholic church preschools to participate in the state's universal pre-kindergarten program should go forward. So it's interesting to me, Al, to see that whenever someone's religious liberty seems to be in question, then the church wants to become a friend of the court, even if the church is not directly involved, because obviously the church does not run any preschools.
Yeah, what the church is involved in is the law firm Beckett that's bringing the lawsuit forward. So Beckett is, I guess, just a law firm. It's not Curtin McConkie. It's not affiliated with the church, but there are several LDS lawyers who are a part of this company or a part of this law firm. And so they're taking on the state of Colorado saying, and it's really interesting to me that they're going after the language of it, saying, well, if it's universal, then it has to be universal. It has to be for everybody. It can't be just for a few or everybody except for the religious. And, there is a case there, but the funny thing is in the previous articles that we were talking about, the issue is that Gordon B. Hinckley said that, well, is it tithing or is it investments and returns? So it's all about the wording, right? It seems to be that's where the whole battle is going to be fought, is in the field of the words.
Yeah, definitely. Let me read just one little section here that also caught my eye on this Beckett law firm. In 2012, Beckett awarded President Dallin H. Oaks, the first counselor in the church's first presidency, with its Canterbury Medal, given each year to someone who, quote, has resolutely and publicly refused to render to Caesar that which is God's. What's your reaction to this award here, Al?
Well, I'll tell you, Beckett's definitely a religious law firm then. The fact that they're using the Canterbury Medal, that Canterbury Cathedral is where Thomas Becket, for which I'm assuming Becket is named, was murdered by order of King Henry VIII. But this all really ties to religious things, and so rendering to Caesar that which is God's. That's another one where Jesus said, "Well, render to Caesar that which is Caesar, and render to God that which is God's." Refusing to render to Caesar that which is God. So, standing resolutely. I think that. I think there's other people besides Dallin H. Oaks that render to God that which is God's, or are better examples of that.
Well, I find this to be a very ironic quote, saying that he has resolutely refused to render to Caesar that which is God's. Well, he's refused to render to Caesar that which is Caesar. He's been a member of the first presidency during the entire EPA debacle, where the church refused to disclose the necessary funds to the federal government. He's refused time and time again. He's tried to fight taxes. He's tried to keep the church's tax exempt status continuously.
Very true. Yeah. Also, as far as one of the most hateful people, this is somebody who speaks time and time again against the LGBTQ community, and is one of the biggest one of the biggest advocates against it, I should say. So,
and also Dallin Oaks is presumably involved with the Australia LDS Charities debacle, which just took place in the last year, where the church is alleged under a massive tort in Australia, and also has come to the the Australian Tax Authority. The ATA is looking at the church's questionable Australian tax loopholes that the church tried to take advantage of and since shut down. So presumably Dallin Oaks was involved with that too, since it was hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's amazing, you continue to publicly not try to give Caesar that which is Caesar's, but then you're giving awards to it, and then you're filing amicus briefs. It's just it's a tangled web. It's a big mess.
Yeah, I don't think they'll take the award back from him, but I don't think he really deserves it.
Now there's a lot of law stuff in the news this week, Al, and I know that you were following this one pretty close too. You referenced it earlier. LDS Goliath versus Cody David, a sad story of loss. What's going on this week in the Cody, Wyoming mess, Al?
Yeah, so now that we've had Goliaths versus Goliaths, we get on to the Goliaths versus David. So the Zoning and Planning Commission, or I think they call it the P&Z Commission, which is a bunch of volunteers in the city of Cody, Wyoming. they got challenged by the church. And so, the church has this, huge legal arm behind them saying, we're going to sue the crap out of you until we get what we want. And so all of these little volunteers up in Cody, Wyoming are just like, okay, well, we're not going to fight. Fine. You want your way, have your way. And the church is really looking like a bully here, that they want what they want. They've got the money to do it. And the people of Cody, Wyoming, they have just a couple of issues when it comes to this temple that's going to be built. And the temple is basically pre-built. They just, have to put the pieces together on site. It's waiting to be assembled. Yeah. And the church is just sitting there chomping at the bit to get it set up. And the people of Cody, Wyoming, the first issue that they had in July when they went before the Planning and Zoning Commission was, well, you're going to have a 101-foot tall temple, 70 feet of that, or 77 feet, is going to be a steeple, just a big spire sticking straight up out of the ground, and or out of the top of the temple, I should say. But so they said, well, yeah, that's an issue, but it never really got resolved. So then the church found this loophole and said, well, because these guys refused to take us to court or to go to court with us, then that means that we can do everything that we want to do, including the steeple. Yeah. So now the mayor has kind of put an executive hold on it, saying, well, hold up here. Surely there's something that we can do to make sure that both sides are appeased. But it seems like the church is just really hard set on getting its way, and they're not going to back down. And so in the city of Cody, Wyoming, there's this prime piece of real estate, and people have pointed out, well, there's a lot of land or open space around this temple that's going to be zoned over to residential and going to have a whole subdivision put in. So somebody who owns all that land stands to make a lot of money, and I believe that they found that the person who owns that land has ties with somebody higher up in the church. So it seems that that's one of the reasons why the church is so ardent about the temple being where the present location's at. But the people of Cody, Wyoming are saying, well, we have a naturescape here that we don't want to be destroyed or disturbed by a big gaudy stone temple. And especially with the big spire sticking straight up into it, it's going to ruin the majesty of the scenery of the mountains around us. So they're not happy about it, but the church is like, well, tough. If you want to fight us, get your own $138 million of legal backing and come after us, which just really is not the approach that the church wants to be taking PR-wise. This is something that is going to, even if the church gets its way and puts up its temple and is going to be happy with all that, there's going to be a permanent divide in the city of Cody, Wyoming, between the LDS who are in favor of the temple and the non-LDS who are against it.
Yeah, let me just read from the article here. It says the structure itself will make it impossible to forget or heal, no matter what happens. Thus, we'll all be left with no winners, only losers. Thus, you have to ask if a church that prides itself on winning friends and converts is proud of its position here. If the church leaders in Salt Lake City truly want to build and maintain a festering soul in the Bighorn Basin, particularly when it is also very, very unnecessary.
All they're saying is move it or take down the steeple. It doesn't have to be 77 feet high. That's all they're saying. And the church is not budging one way or at all. They're just saying, no, we want what we want and we can afford it. And that's kind of the precedent that we're going to see is the churches. Can the church buy its way, because it has all the money in the world, can it buy its way into getting what it wants? And if that's the case,
Probably.
what kind of a country do we live in where you can buy your way around laws, buy your way around building regulations? In Smithfield, Utah, the temple there, they went to the zoning commission and they got they got lenience to build the temple, which is higher than any other building in the city of Smithfield. And there wasn't any pushback, mostly because it's such a heavily LDS community. But the temple ran into some problems because, well, it's right in the approach pattern for the Logan City Airport. So having a temple that tall is a little bit of a risk when it comes to having planes approach. And so they had to, get some sort of justification and say, well, no, it's not going to be that tall. The planes are actually going to be high enough up that they won't have to worry about, ripping their landing gear off on Angel Moroni. Because I guess Angel Moroni is kind of starting to disappear from temples, as we've seen, right?
Right, yeah. 50, 5 out of 6 temples do not have the Angel Moroni on the top. But to answer your question, can the church just sue and get its way? The answer is almost assuredly yes, the church can. And the church will.
Yeah.
And this is also this Cody group here has filed with the court to block the LDS Temple and its 77-foot steeple. The group fighting a proposed Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints temple in Cody has filed a petition intending to halt construction of the building and its controversial 77-foot ceiling or steeple. The petition came from the Preserve Our Cody Neighborhoods, a group that opposes the temple's location and its giant steeple. So, people are lawyering up on both sides here. There's a lot of animus that's taking place here. And one thing that I want to note here, Al, is that the church, it takes great pride on the church news of providing updates on every single one of its temples, the open house, the groundbreaking, the announcement, the dedication, all of the little details for all 340 temples that the church has. They're going to go through. But for some reason, Al, this week, we didn't get one update on this Cody Temple. I can't imagine why.
Yeah, because there's no good news any way you paint it. I mean, this is really causing a rift in the community. That I love the quote that you said earlier, that this is just going to forever be a reminder. I mean, the church loves to have these temples as a reminder to people, right? But it's a reminder to look heavenward, to look to God. This Cody Temple is a reminder that, the church can bend you over whenever it wants to, as long as it's got the cash.
Yeah, let me just read one more of the quote from this particular article here, and we'll move along. It says, the temple controversy has led to significant division in Cody, an issue City Council member Don Shreve touched upon during the meeting last week. He encouraged those who support the temple to talk with leaders of the church about the tower height and to do something to heal the community. Quote, I question whether Cody is going to be okay. The way my phone has blown up, the emails that I get, there's a scar in this community right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Don Shreve is right, but I don't think that Don Shreve really understands the structure of the LDS Church. How do you talk to somebody about the temple within the church? I mean, there's not a lot of access. I mean, first of all, who do you go to in the first place? And do you have access to that person? Yeah.
This is we're going to be following the stay with us on the Mormon News Roundup. We are going, even though the church news, KSL, and the rest of those church affiliated outlets and podcasts, they refuse to cover this issue. We will be covering it and watching it very carefully. So that's what you're getting with the Mormon News Roundup, is the news that you just can't find anywhere else, right, Al?
Exactly. And when it comes to these temples, it seems like that's going to be a big dividing thing with Cody, Heber Valley Temple, especially.
Yeah.
That's where we first saw it, that the church is starting to really bulldoze its way through. And in Heber Valley, it's still a high enough percentage of LDS community that they're just kind of like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Well, I'll give you an update on that. The update on that one is that the difference is that Wasatch County, which is where the Heber Valley Temple is, has a large tax base with a lot of money.
Yeah.
And the deputy attorney general for Wasatch County has already lawyered up. The church has engaged a law firm in Heber Valley in Wasatch County, and they're going to fight this one because they have the resources. Cody, Wyoming, on the other hand, they don't have resources. It's a small town of 10,000 people. They don't have huge $1 million mansions like what you find in Midway, Utah. You know what I mean? So the church is going to be able to push its way and push over these smaller communities and small towns. And you're going to see an increasing, as the percentage of Mormons and Mormon influence continuously wanes, It's dropped in the last 15 years. From 2008, 1.8% of Americans affiliated themselves with, called themselves Mormons. 50% drop in the last 15 years. As Mormon influence continues to wane, as you try to push through temples into these smaller places, you will increasingly see a more vitriolic pushback.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and we're seeing that, and I think that's just going to be more of the case going forward. The church is no longer just, it seems like the mask is slipping, and so it's not just the kindly old grandfather leading the church anymore. Instead, it's just the greedy old businessman.
Well, and also the church used to put temples in places where it was really, I would say, justified. You had new converts. Sure. You had a good Mormon population that would sustain it. Cody, Wyoming is none of those places. You have maybe 1,000 members of the church within the surrounding hour area. There's not enough will. There's not enough political will on the ground to get these temples over the finish line. It's going to take money. It's going to take threats. It's going to take resources. And it's going to burn a lot of bridges along the way.
It's already starting. Yep.
Yeah. Now, our next article here, Al, this is from Gail Miller's interview with the Church News. Now, she gives insights about her family's involvement and leadership in compiling and creating the Joseph Smith Papers collection, which was just completed a couple of months ago. This article was released on August 23rd, 2023. An inspiring article here about what she did to help with the Joseph Smith Papers project. With Al, I know that you agree with me that the Joseph Smith Papers project was a really good endeavor that the church undertook.
Oh, it certainly was. I mean, this is one of the things where the church actually came out and published its own anti-Mormon literature.
Or try to be as transparent as it could be.
Yeah, that's probably a better way of saying it. It's the church tried to have more transparency, and so good on Gail Miller for funding that. That was a good endeavor, and I think that it's going to be a good resource going forward.
Absolutely. Now, I wish they would do that for all of church history, not just until, I believe the Joseph Smith Papers project basically only goes up to 1844. We need to have the process repeated through Brigham Young paper project, Lorenzo Snow paper project. We need a complete history of all of church history, of all documents, of everything, not being hidden in First Presidency vaults or in the Granite Mountainside in Little Cottonwood Canyon. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think that rather than put the drawing of Joseph Smith on the front, they need to put the daguerreotype picture of Joseph Smith on the cover of the Joseph Smith papers too.
Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. Now, Al, we covered this in she in this article. She gives her insights about the family's involvement, and it's a very inspiring article about how the takeaways. And Al, there was 4 takeaways, but I came up with even more takeaways because Al, we covered this in the in our 5th Sunday at our church. This article.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, absolutely, really good stuff. Really good stuff here. Maybe you can see where I'm going here, but we don't always do a Mormon News Roundup poll of the week here. But Al, we got one on tap for you, and I need your help to complete this poll. Are you ready?
All right, here we go.
Okay, so some inspiring takeaways from Gail Miller's church news interview, and if I could just get you to read these headlines, Al, and let me know your thoughts on it, I would appreciate that. So here is, and by the way, we release all of these episodes live on YouTube every Sunday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For those of you in the live chat, get ready to write your vote of 1 through 10 in the live chat as what you think is the most inspiring takeaway from Gail Miller's interview with the Deseret News. Okay, here we go. How about number 1, Al?
Number 1, if you give enough money to the church, you too can be featured in the Deseret News. You
certainly can. Yeah, you definitely can. And guess what that number is? Guess what about the number is that if you want to get featured in the church news, Al, guess what the number is that I think that you need to be able to donate.
It's got to be 7 figures at the minimum.
It's around 10 million.
Okay, so 8 figures. All right.
Yeah,
but that's kind of what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, in the right ball, or as I like to call it, just one Cody Temple, Wyoming lawsuit.
That's right.
I just calculate things in terms of Cody Temple lawsuits. It's simpler math for me.
It's easier to measure that way.
Yeah. It is. Now, so Al, it's never too late. You can get featured in the Deseret News too. It just, I don't know. It takes $10 million. That's a lot of money.
Just about 9.9 million. Well, 9.99 million more than I have.
Or as we like to call it, about an hour and a half from church income, because like we said, the church makes about $3 million an hour. I guess about $3 million an hour. So that's about 3 hours from the church's income.
This really puts it in perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Or how about that's number one? Or is it Al number two? This is the second takeaway.
Okay. Everything on this planet should exist for the singular purpose of strengthening testimonies in the LDS Church and especially its leaders.
That's not a joke, Al. That's really the takeaway from the article.
I'm sure. I'm surprised that's not a quote from the article. Yeah.
Okay. Or how about number three?
Scheduling pro sporting games on the Sabbath is just fine as long as you raise the ticket prices while your church leaders look the other way.
Yeah. Yeah, no problem. Now, if you hold hands with someone who's gay, that's a big issue. But if but scheduling pro sporting games on the Sabbath, that's a big problem, right, Al?
Exactly. Yeah, gotta have your priorities straight.
Absolutely. Or how about this one?
Serving booze and selling cigarettes in the Delta Center for decades is great for the bottom line and no problem at all for the church, as long as you pay tithing on the gross and not the net. Yeah.
You know, I was surprised that she admitted that in the article, Al.
That's shocking. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't believe they printed that. But that seems pretty accurate, though. Actually,
it really does. The church, as long as they get paid, they don't care what you do. Yeah, because let's see, Marriott hotels still had like porn channels, pay-per-view. Yeah,
exactly. As long as you cut in Big Brother. Or how about this one now?
Racism on the Utah Jazz ended long ago. Don't worry about those little flicks of history.
Okay, now this is a deep, sick. This is pretty sick. What is that flicks of history? Do you know where that's from? That's a tough one, Al.
I haven't been following Utah Jazz all that well over the years. So
you remember President Hinckley was asked on Larry King about the race in the priesthood band, and that's what he said. Don't worry about those little flicks of history.
Yeah, that's the quote. Okay.
Okay.
I do remember that. Yeah.
This is getting very obscure here. Okay. How about this next one, Al?
Being Utah's richest woman has really helped me understand the persecution that the first presidency feels.
Nice. Birds of a feather, Al. Birds of a feather.
Yeah, I'm sure she wipes her tears away with $100 bills. Yep.
Yeah, easy. How about this next one?
Brokeback Mountain is still a really evil movie.
Yeah, it is. That's one of the worst, Al.
Yeah, once again, gays holding hands just can't be tolerated. But hey, when it comes to keeping the Sabbath day holy, that's not in the Ten Commandments, is it?
Or serving booze, cigarettes, any of that other stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
But Brokeback Mountain, I have my standards, Al, and so does Gail Miller. She has her standards too.
Yes, she does. Yeah. I wonder if she's ever seen the movie.
I wouldn't hold your breath.
Yeah, because I'm curious where's she getting the idea that it's a really evil movie? Is it just because she's heard that there's gay cowboys in it?
You'd have to ask her. How about this next one?
All right. Nepotism in the Miller family business is definitely the Mormon way.
It sure is.
Yeah. Oh, I love that little picture down there in the corner, the meme. Nepotism, easier than working your way to the top. Yep.
Yeah, definitely. The Miller family is all about the nepotism. And you know what? The church, there's a lot of nepotism there too.
Sure does. Yep.
Yeah, that's definitely the Mormon way. How about this next one, Al?
In contrast to what Jesus preached, becoming super wealthy off of your husband's death is perfectly fine, just as long as you share a piece of your postmortem pie with your celestial big brother.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And like we said, pay on gross, not net. And here's the final one here, Al. This is number 10.
Oh, I love this one. Serving senior church missions is for the wealthy, but not the top 1% like me.
Yeah, Gail Miller is not going on a mission, Al.
Oh, no, why would she? She's too busy. She has so much going on.
No, she's definitely not. The top 1%, they don't go on missions. President Nelson, President Eyring, President Oaks, none of those folks went on a mission. But it's
not even senior missions. These guys are but they're full time. No, they're apostles. They're executives for a corporation. They're not missionaries. This isn't something that they're volunteering to do. They get compensated.
Yeah, absolutely. Well compensated. Now, let's cast your votes here in the live chat here for what you think is the most inspiring takeaway from Gail Miller's interview with the Church News. And Al, what do you think about Gail Miller's interview with the Church News? What is the most inspiring takeaway for you?
Normally it seems like the poll had about 5 to 7 options. This one, it's got 10 options, so this is going to be a difficult one. But let's see. I'm going to say that number 9 is my favorite. In contrast to what Jesus preached, becoming super wealthy off of your husband's death is perfectly fine, just as long as you share a piece of your postmortem pie with your celestial big brother.
I could get myself canceled for this poll, Al.
Something about a camel and eye of a needle or something.
I personally am voting for number 7. Brokeback Mountain is still a really evil movie.
I love that one. And what I really love the most, this takes me back to a time in church where this guy was speaking out against the Real Housewives or TV show, the reality show. He said, "Oh, that's an evil show." I'm like, "Have you seen it?" He's like, "Well, no, but it's evil." I'm like, well, "How do you know it's evil if you haven't seen it?" So, I mean, to be fair, I haven't seen Brokeback Mountain. But
I haven't seen it either. It's just I guess it's just I always like looking at irony. The irony is that Larry H. Miller owned a number of movie theaters. We're referencing back to when Larry Miller banned Brokeback Mountain famously, and it went viral.
Yeah, I forget. Larry Miller, he owns more businesses. Well, I mean, the late Larry Miller, he owns more businesses than the Lord does. Well, not necessarily. The church owns its fair amount of businesses too.
Pretty close. Okay, he's in good company, and so it's amazing that all of these incredibly violent movies, with sexually graphic. Now it was heterosexually graphic content, and also misogynistic, racist movies. Just terrible films. Those didn't have one issue with any of those, but a couple of cowboys hugged in a tent, and that's where the band comes in. Come on, man.
Yeah, so they refused to play Brokeback Mountain at the Larry Miller. Wow.
Yes, that's the entire joke here. Okay, my jokes are so hard to. Yeah, this is.
But I remember when the movie came out. But I forgot that little tidbit. Thank you for reminding me.
Right. Yeah. And Gail, she just in that Church News article, she wanted to reiterate that Brokeback Mountain, it's not gotten any better. Okay, just for information.
And I'll tell you something, Gail. Salt Lake City hasn't gotten any better. It's one of the big LGBTQ hubs in the world now. There's a huge population of the LGBTQ community in Salt Lake City. So by your own standard, I personally I think it's great. But by Gail's standard, it's not gotten any better because they banned Brokeback Mountain. In fact, it grew.
Exactly. Now, this is a real quick article. We only got 2 articles left to go here, Al. And this is always BYU Education Week. That's always been very big here. And, the church historian, they're down there at BYU. What is Church Education Week down there anyway, Al?
Church Education Week they take basically a week-long conference for anybody who's super into LDS Church doctrine. This is a little different than the CES symposiums used to be, but this is kind of for anybody. It's almost like for the strength of youth for adults in the LDS Church is a good way of putting it. It's a conference where they have different speakers, different topics, and a lot of times they'll come up with different ideas from apologists of how to handle some difficult things, maybe some things that were brought up in the CES letter, right? Some responses to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I just want to tweet this out very briefly here that the attendance for the Education Week is really, really down. And it kind of reminds me here, this is Chino Blanco, who we had on the program here. He follows Mormon news, I think, better than pretty much anybody on the planet, except for maybe Peggy Fletcher Stack or Tad Welch. Anyway, he tweeted this out. Like the thrilling Mormon pageants of yesteryear, BYU Education Week is a phenomenon on its last legs. Attendance is sparse and enthusiasm is kaput. It's just that the numbers are down, the enthusiasm is down, the age of the people who's involved is up. Are we going to see it eventually go just kind of like the pageants, just, one of those things that just is in the dustbin of history?
Well, when it stops making money, that's exactly what will happen. So if they stop selling tickets and it becomes more of a cost to run than it's profitable to run, they'll do away with it.
Yeah. Now, our last article, this is a thunderbolt here. The church has announced, the Church Board of Education has approved updates to the student ecclesiastical endorsement, the honor code, the dress and the grooming principles and expectations for the church educational system here. We've got a long awaited update here to BYU campuses. What's going on with this, Al?
Scandal. Yeah, this is, I'll tell you, this is like, let's see. If in The Handmaid's Tale, they allowed the handmaids to take off their little white bonnets, yeah, that would be less scandalous than what BYU Idaho is allowing their students to do.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. Let me just give you a sum up here of what we're seeing in here. Let me play this. This is making national news here, Al. Let me get your reaction.
Educational system updating its guidelines for students. The updated rules focusing on ecclesiastical endorsements, which students have to receive each year from their local church leader, the honor code, and dress and grooming standards. While no major changes were made for dress and grooming standards for students, the updated rules align expectations at all church schools. Previously, only students at BYU Idaho were not allowed to wear shorts. Now students at all campuses have the same rules, meaning everyone can wear modest shorts. The church saying in a statement this, we are striving to create a culture that is consistent with the distinct religious purpose of CES institutions. The church runs 4 educational institutions, including BYU in Provo, BYU Idaho, BYU Hawaii, and Ensign College.
Now, the students at BYU can now finally wear shorts.
Modest shorts. So, at least knee length. We don't want to expose any leg, right?
No, absolutely not.
Modest has been hottest for a long time, and it just got a little cooler.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple of other tweets. I got a lot of, so this is making the rounds on social media. At the end of the day, we're just doing the best we can. So we were looking, can we get an equal treatment update from God and his university? No, the best I can do is shorts.
I love that.
Yeah. Okay. So for also Sky Anderson, who's a kind of a gay LDS apologist, he's saying, I'm grateful to see this clarification added to BYU's honor code. So even though I thought the original language was clear enough, some still found overly complex justifications for same-sex romantic behavior on campus. So the division will always exist, but clarity leaves less room for it. So he's speaking in particular, and this is probably what is going viral the most, is this particular quote. Yeah. It says that the honor code, can you read this quote here, Al? What is this? I
sure can. The honor code includes the commitment to live a chaste and virtuous life, including abstaining from any sexual relations outside of marriage between a man and a woman. New language clarifies, living a chaste and virtuous life also includes abstaining from same-sex romantic behavior.
All right, what are you getting from that, Al?
So yeah, as long as you're married to a member of the opposite sex, you can have sexual relations, but any romantic behavior between people that you're not married to that's of the opposite sex from you, that's still prohibited. And they're not going to be changing that anytime soon. It's they're doubling down on they don't want same-sex courtship going on.
No, absolutely. And this is I just want to bring up this tweet here. This is a shadow definition of church doctrine. Mm-hmm. Chastity now precludes, this is really important, Al. Chastity now precludes romantic relationships for gay people in the church. They don't just have to abstain from sex, because that's not what it said. No. It says that they can't have romance.
Yeah, okay? They can't even, they can't date. They can't, even associate, really? Anything that could light a spark between them.
Yeah, I mean, and this is a preclusion on physical activity. It's not a preclusion of physical activity. It's a preclusion on love. So what that says is, it's not that you can't say, okay, this is just about, we don't allow premarital sex at any of the BYUs, and gay persons are no different. No, now we have a difference. It says that you can't even engage in romantic behavior. Okay, that means that you can't give a same-sex person, is that a hug? Is that holding hands? Is that kissing another individual? None of those, to my knowledge, even according to church doctrine, are sins, Al. It's not a sin to hold someone's hand. It's not a sin to give someone a kiss. But now it says that you can't even have any romantic behavior at all. You can't even give someone a romantic hug.
Yeah. I think they're going a little extreme with some of the things that Paul said about celibacy. But Paul also said, yeah, greet each other with a holy kiss, but that's considered romantic behavior. So this is, the waters are muddy.
Yeah, this takes me back. If you remember the last update to the LGBTQ policies on BYU campuses, this was back in 2020, back in March of 2020. And this is where the church said at BYU, it said, quote, in instances of LGBTQ students, holding hands will be handled on a case-by-case basis, end quote. Mm-hmm. Okay. So it seems like we're taking a step back here. That, I mean, this is what we need to be okay, you're going to college, you're paying tuition, but we need college administrators to be looking at people's case files for people holding hands. That's where we're spending our tithing dollars to pay for administrators who are going to be looking at the case file. Oh, we got another case file, somebody holding hands. Let's open an inquiry. That's where we were at in 2020, and it seems like that's where we're at once again.
Yeah, not a lot of progress. We're not really moving forward.
No, we're not moving forward at all. And it's not just the LGBTQ issue here. Prospective BYU students, Al, according to Peggy Fletcher Stack, will face a set of questions that are much like the Temple recommend questions, with one about agreeing with the church added in. It's like an additional ecclesiastical endorsement for basically thought police, thought control. So, I mean, if we look at the LGBTQ stuff, you can't even have romantic thoughts. And now the questions are, once again, very much policing your thoughts. It used to be that, okay, we judge people and their character on their actions. This entire revamp is all about making sure that your thoughts are the church's thoughts, not God's thoughts, the church's thoughts. It's a major thought police incursion into student life.
True. And these students are, at least they know exactly what they're getting into going forward.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have time to, basically it says, we don't have time to go into all of the questions here. We were going to link all of these into our show notes. If you just take a look at into our show notes here, especially if you come on over to Patreon. On our Patreon, we have the full episodes. They're ad-free. You get early access, and they include all of the links and all of the commentary that goes along with this. The best way to enjoy this program, if you're interested in it, is to join our Patreon, which is very, very inexpensive. But I just, I gave you a scoop on the ground here that I have gotten a picture of what the new dress code at BYU Idaho looks like. And I just want to get your thoughts. What do you think about this new dress code here that they've got going?
For shame. I think it's going to be a while before we see that kind of a dress code accepted at BYU. I mean, it took BYU Idaho until 2023 to allow kids to wear shorts. They're not going to be wearing leotards and exercise clothes. It's going to be a while.
Yeah, I'm a big Star Trek fan, and I'm a member of the Trexmo meme club on Facebook. So I created this. This does look like, maybe this is the BYU Idaho dress code. Not sure about it.
Could be. I don't think so, because you can see her shoulders and elbows on the girl on the right. Yeah.
Well, you got to be careful about that. So let me ask you this, Al. What is your biggest takeaway? Because there was several updates as we covered already here. There was what is the biggest takeaway from the CS student rule changes? Is it number one, BYU Idaho students can now wear shorts, or is it number two, more questions with bishops, or is it number three, zero meaningful change, or number four, is it still no ban on soaking?
Boy, the real big one is that zero meaningful change. But I personally, I think that the big takeaway from this is BYU Idaho can wear shorts now, because I mean that's what this is where we are. And when people talk about Gilead and the Handmaid's Tale, that's BYU Idaho. Rexburg is Gilead, the home of Chad Daybell and Lori Ballo. Yeah.
Saudi Arabia finally gave women the right to vote here a couple of years ago. And just a few short years later, Al, BYU Idaho has allowed people to wear shorts. We're really making progress in our modern society.
I'll say.
Now, this is important, Al. Guess who still wouldn't be allowed to enroll at BYU Idaho?
Well, he could wear shorts, but not a dress.
No, he can't. No, the beard's out.
Oh, and the beards. Yeah, and the long hair.
No.
So, and he's exposing way too much cleavage.
Exactly. So he's got the beard, he's got the hair, he's not wearing the proper garments. And by the way, you cannot have flip-flops on campus at BYU Idaho either. You cannot wear flip-flops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Jesus is out at BYU Idaho.
Yep. Sorry. But Brigham Young's still good. He can go. Oh no, he's got the beard. Oh, and the long hair.
That's the crazy thing is Brigham Young University, Brigham Young himself couldn't attend.
Yeah.
Because the beard prohibition is still there.
Yeah. And he did have long hair. So yeah, he's got a problem. And
he's a polygamist, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, he's got a lot of the namesake has a lot of problems.
See, and Brigham Young was basically an incredible racist, but those policies have since been disavowed. So if you were to actually believe what Brigham Young believes, you would be affiliating with thoughts or philosophies that don't align with the modern church. So the fact that he's an incredible racist would also ban him from attendance.
And once again, Rexburg, Idaho is where Chad Daybell, who's what we would call a fringe kind of weirdo with some, a lot of the ideas that these fringe groups have are very reminiscent of things that Brigham Young taught. So yeah, that's kind of that neighborhood. Yeah, weird.
Let me give you one last sum up here from an article that I found this week, which I actually think sums up the news here for this week pretty well. And this was from Michael Benjamin, who tweeted this out. LDS Church press releases this week, August 21st. Don't be prejudiced against LGBTQ. This includes prejudice based on gender or sexual orientation. He's referencing the missionary handbook was updated to include this verbiage, okay?
Yeah.
But then, 3 days later, we are prejudiced against LGBTQ because living a chaste and virtuous life includes abstaining from same-sex romantic behavior, and you cannot attend any church institution or university if you do so. Do you see I always look for the irony here, Al. Do you see the irony here?
That's beautiful. Let's see. I don't know if hypocrisy or contradiction. It's a direct contradiction is what it is.
Yeah.
Direct contradiction.
Yeah, it's just, I think that sums up the week in Mormonism pretty well. Al, have we ruminated properly on the great and spacious beehive?
Absolutely. Like I said, this week I was very fortunate to be on because of all the news this week. It's been a juicy one.
Great. Can you take us out?
Absolutely. Hey, thank you all very much for joining us here as we ruminated on the great and spacious beehive. Big shout out to Weird Alma on bandcamp.com for this episode's music. And thank you all so much for joining us. Remember, no unhallowed hand can stop this podcast from progressing.
When it comes to nicknames of the church, such as LDS Church, the Mormon Church, to remove the Lord's name from the Lord's church is a major victory for Satan.
Satan.